Hey amazing hackers, this episode is sponsored by the Cybersecurity Hat, the ultimate hacking platform where you can learn in a fun and a practical way using exclusive frameworks that unlock amazing possibilities. In the description of this video, you will find all details for my special code on the Cybersecurity Hacked products. Just use R19 at checkout and enjoy. Right, welcome back to our 19.0 podcast. Today is going to be fun because you have someone here who has been reverse engineering, reversing malware for what, 25 years now?
Yes.
Yeah, this is longer than someone of lessons have been alive. Candid, seriously, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time. I know that you have worked at Symantec, IBM Research, Acronis. You have seen the entire evolution of malware. And I have to ask you, when you started doing malware analysis, did you ever imagine would end up in the world of multi-stage loaders, encrypted payloads, and malware actively testing against ADRs? Let's go.
I never imagined that. But yeah, thanks for having me. And yes, thanks for making me feel old. But maybe it's like wine, right? With the years, you get better and more experience.
Yeah, of course.
But yes, I mean, when I started, basically at the time with Symantec, Symantec was still shipping out signatures on floppy disks. And some of the generation don't even remember floppy disks, right?
That's crazy. That's crazy, bro.
So that shows it. And again, when I was there, that was kind of the times of the I love you love letter, which was 2000. So as in very, very long time ago. And spyware, adware wasn't even a thing. Ransomware wasn't a thing. So those all came later. And as you said, at the time, it probably was all a bit easier. I mean, there were some sophisticated viruses, specifically boot sector viruses and other things. But normally it was a visual basic script, easy to analyze, no Go, no Rust, and it only started with the time. So interesting for me, I saw, as you said, the whole evolution, right, to runtime packers. Armadillo was one of those where you have multiple layers of encryption. And I mean, at first we were also, that's pretty serious, but then you grow with it. So I think it's like everything, right? Even if you start now, don't get frustrated or think, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing. Just spend the time, and yeah, after 25 years, you will be an expert as well.
Exactly. That's really crazy. I love that. And then I love that you mentioned that shit because early malware felt almost, let's say, experimental. Today it feels it's like engineers. It's like a product. There is KA, there is versioning, there is testing against security tools. um, when did you personally feel that turning point? When did you analyze, okay, let's say a sample and think, okay, this isn't just a malware, this is a professional operation?
I think must have been around 2005, maybe. I recall that's kind of when we started seeing more and more of the spyware and adware thing. That was at the time where you had fake antivirus. So as in, you come to a website, it says, oh, you're infected with 20 viruses, download our free product. You click, you download, and then it says, oh, you have a very serious problem. If you pay for the full version, we're going to remove it for you, right? And of course, it was just a scam. It didn't do anything. But they were starting to get smarter and smarter. So some of them actually dropped real malware. So you could take the file, and we had some customers submit the file and say, hey, why didn't you detect it? And we say, oh, yeah, this is malware. Yes, you should delete it. So they said, oh, the other one must be better. So they start paying, of course. And we started detecting those fake antivirus, which resulted in them suing us. And at the time, whenever you did a signature, you also did a nice write-up on the website because we didn't talk about millions of samples. So you had the analyst's name, as in my name, under virus XY analysis. So I got sued twice personally from one of those companies. And that's exactly the point where I realized that's a business behind it, right? You're basically ruining their scam business and they're not taking it lightly. Luckily, of course, I had the corporate lawyers to help me, so I didn't have to go to court and everything. But it's still, that was kind of one of those moments where you realize it's not just for fun, it is for profit, at least for some.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And then today more than malware don't doesn't don't try to execute. It try to survive because okay, I will talk about sandbox detection and debugging, environment fingerprints, delay execution. When you open a binary today, I don't know, in IDA Pro or Guida Pro, what's the first sign that tells you, okay, this is this one of to be anyone?
I mean, I always expect the worst from the malware. So as in, once you open it up, you look for a few kind of APIs, right? Back in the days, the first thing you of course want to know is, okay, any network activity, any write activity to files, right? Is it trying to encrypt your stuff? Is it trying to steal your passwords? So those would be the classical one. But yes, I've seen my fair share of kind of those VM or environment detection things where it's checking how many open documents you have or recent open documents you have in your office, right? In the Microsoft Office. Because in many sandboxes, they might install the Office product from Microsoft, but they never use it as normal, right? So you don't have any bookmarks or open things. They watch how fast you move your mouse. We've seen some which kind of detect if you move in a straight line or if you actually do the wiggling as normal users would. And whenever we thought, okay, that's the one you have to look for now, they would come up with something new, right? On-code exceptions for some weird assembly code, which does work but shouldn't work, but can tell you if you're on a virtual system. So at the moment, I'd say I usually probably start, I mean, opening up in a hex editor, so you just know, okay, is it a Windows executable, a PE file, is it a Mac O file? And then probably I would just use a sandbox and double click it to really just see, okay, is it trying to blue screen? Is it doing something nasty, right? And
I love that. I really love that.
it's the simplest way. Then you can, of course, go into, right? Because maybe they're just putting up a red herring. And speaking of red herring, we had a few of those as well, where if you double click it, it would go to a command and control server, but the domain is no longer registered, nothing is there. And you say, okay, so work is done, right? So maybe an old malware. But if you run it on a real physical system, it would go to a different domain. So it would notice that it's on a virtual system, and then it knows you're going to look for it. So it's going to some old C2, which they never used, just to give you the opportunity and say, oh yeah, it is
Oh,
malware,
that's
but
evil. That's
nothing
really
there.
evil, bro. That's evil.
That's
that's
that's the cat and
that's
mouse game. Yeah.
yeah, of course, and leveraging this question, what's the most elegant, let's say elegant, analysis techniques you have ever seen? Not the loudest, but the smartest, let's say.
I mean, I always liked the one that basically check your CPU cores, how much RAM you have, and how much kind of what your graphic card is. It doesn't work too much nowadays, probably, but 2-3 years ago, uh, if you have a virtual machine for yourself at home, you're probably not going to have 64 cores and 2 TB of RAM, right? Because usually you try to have smaller systems, and that's kind of, if you want to increase it, that's basically going to cost you money, right? So it's a nice delimiter for, if you analyze it, you actually need a fast or a good machine, because they can detect, well, nobody's going to have only 2 cores in 2026, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that's a a smart one, because all the other API keys and stuff you can virtualize, right, and
Yeah.
move the VM tools or Proxmox and other things. But physical attribute on how much free space you have on your disk, right? That's harder to fake. And if you want to have it, you're going to have to pay for it. So they
Yeah.
really want to make it hard for you.
Yeah, for sure. That's really interesting. And I know that you, of course, you know a lot of ADR evasion. This is really this is a topic that I really love to talk about, and I want to go a bit deep into ADR evasion because you have moved from signature detection to behavior
Mhm.
based systems, but attackers, of course, adapted. Okay, you talk direct calls, API hashing, indirect execution chains, stack spoofing. From your perspective, attackers currently ahead in user land evasion?
I'd say many of the techniques I see, they don't even care too much about the evasion. So I see two avenues. One is the whole living off the land. So using legitimate tools, could be installing AnyDesk, TeamViewer, VNC, any of those as a backdoor, or even just basically log into the system, right, with all the stolen identities, because that's a lot harder to detect for an EDR, right? Because there is no malware involved, and you can have your PowerShell script or stuff do a lot of bad things. And the other part is instead of trying to evade the EDR, just basically kill it or silence it, right? We had the Bring Your Own Vulnerable Driver, which was popular last year. There was EDR Freeze. I've seen a few interesting ones. Doesn't work anymore, at least not on the big ones, but basically have the EDR delete its own driver. For a few of those, you could fake, as in, oh, there's an iCar file in your system driver, and then you don't have access to delete the file, but of course the EDR itself has the access and can delete itself. And many of those you can remove the driver in a safe boot, right? A few of those. So I've seen more of those where they basically just uninstall the product one way or the other, right? Either crash it, exhaust it so that kind of it's no longer logging, adding some app blocker, as in Windows app prevention methods, so that next reboot it won't start. And then, of course, the benefit of that is anything you do after that will not be reported to the big kind of console, right? So you're free to do, and you don't have to care about the behavior. Because I'm fully with you. The behavior-based detection that worked quite well back in 2010, I'd say. But then, even for ransomware, we've seen that they started to basically slow down the encryption. Because one of the classical heuristics is you're going to check, does one process encrypt 10 files within 10 seconds? And that's very simple. It's hard to bypass, as in you can see if a file is encrypted, the entropy changes, right? You do read writes of the same blocks. And then you just count and say, well, either someone is running BitLocker for kind of encrypting your hard drive for good reasons, but then you would see the process. If it's something else, I just kill the process. But then they started, well, maybe I just do 9 files within 10 seconds. And suddenly you're no longer detecting it. Or they say, hey, let's do 10 different processes, and each process only encrypts 1 file. So the behavior one, again, it's a cat and mouse game. So I think
that
it's a tough
yes,
one,
in
but
2026, that's really hard to. Yes, of course, this I love to research about that, and I really try many things. I really and then of course I am inside many Maori groups, and I see terrible things inside that. But yeah, of course, you need to stay. You need to stay ahead because When you go through and you try to find what the new techniques, you probably you can see interesting things in GitHub repositories and stuff like that. But when you go more deeper in specifically uh, channel groups, you can see, whoa, it's a world of things. But I have a question for you.
Sure.
Imagine if you had to design a malware today, purely academic, of course. um, would you focus more on bypassing telemetry or blending into legitimate behavior?
I probably would go for the legitimate behavior, kind of to blend in, because a lot of the things you probably want to achieve, you can achieve with legitimate behavior, right? I mean, encrypting the files, ransomware, that's probably not the normal legitimate one, but we see that even ransomware, right, is more about the exfiltration of the data and then blackmailing you nowadays. But yeah, I'd say the kind of trying to hide, as I said, lol bin, so living off the land, those things, just logging in, identity hijacking. But having said that, there are
Mhm.
many interesting ways. I've seen attackers basically not trying to evade telemetry data, but generating their own fake telemetry data.
Mhm.
Because there are some products, specifically with Seam, right, where you can just send anything as long as you're in the same network. And then you say, oh, by the way, there's a ransomware on the machine left to me, on the machine right to me. There's also a Luma, InfoStealer, and Redline. So you basically just flood. And then either, of course, the analyst will say, well, sounds like a lot of false positives, I'm switching it off. Or they will be busy analyzing the other thing while the attacker does its own thing, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes, and of course, now that we're in 2026, we all know that a lot of the companies use, sorry, use using SOAR, so as in
Mhm.
automating the response.
Mhm.
And this can mean that if you're generating an alert, that suddenly the system will get quarantined, right, or isolated.
Mhm.
So imagine you will be able to, let's say, spoof and fake a telemetry and say, oh, your Active Directory service just had a Trojan horse on it. And now your EDR just isolates your EDR, your Active Directory service. And now suddenly your whole organization is down, right?
Mhm.
Or say, hey, your firewall has done something bad, so let's ignore that IP address from there. So if you can spoof some of those telemetry data, and you know that it's generating kind of by default some response to those attacks, that can be really devastating as well. And AI will probably even make it worse, right? Because AI thinks, oh yeah, I know that ransomware, let me shut down all the processes and
Yeah.
kill everything. So
It's create really,
crazy.
really a big struggle. I know that. And something I've been think about a lot are ADR really prevent attacks, or do you think that they just giving better visibility after the fact? What's
It,
your
it's a very good question. I would even kind of take one step back and say, why do we have EDR, right? Back in the days, it was
mm-hmm.
antivirus. Now it's endpoint protection
Mm-hmm.
platforms. And yes, they used signatures, but I think we introduced in 2008 or so behavior-based detection. So that's not something new, right? But
Mm-hmm.
malware still managed to get through. And that's when kind of EDR came, right? Because it's endpoint
Mm-hmm.
detection respond. So you would say, hey, if something comes through, I want to detect it, but also respond to the threat because I know it's in action. Which, if you think about it, basically means we admitted that antivirus does not work. So we said, oh, let's add another layer, right? Let's add EDR. And now we're at that point where we say, well, EDR won't block everything either, right? So that's why you have SIEM or a second opinion, kind of one-off scanners, right? Behavior-based detection or anomaly detections, or even exfiltration detections. So it's just fixing one by adding another layer, which is probably not the right way. Having said that, I think EDR has a tough standing because you could log a lot more, right? You could basically log every API call on a Windows system,
Yeah.
for example. But then your system will be really slow and you will have a lot of false positives because there are so many things happening that are, as we said, kind of legitimate, right? If I update my browser password, something will be read and written to the browser password.
Yeah, they live off the land. They really move slowly. And in your experience, let's say, is behavior detection is truly effective against advanced operators? Usually, for example, yes,
It
move slowly, like you said before. Okay, for example, in Hansover example, you said that, okay, you create, for example, 9 process and 90 process. Each process will encrypt one specific file. But do you think that this type of behavior it's really effective against advanced operators?
it depends a little bit how you configure it and what you use. In general, I would say probably 70%, 70, it's still effective. So I
Mm-hmm.
think if you're a classical info stealer that's trying to kind of go through all your browsers and find the wallet.dat with your Bitcoins, those are easy behavior, or as I said, ransomware. If it starts to encrypt a lot of files, that's easy to pinpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say configuration, if you go back to the living off the land, technically that's still an anomaly, right? As in, if I never
Mm-hmm.
use PowerShell on my machine, but suddenly I see a lot of PowerShell scripts, then I know that even if they are kind of legitimate, it's still something
Mm-hmm.
which probably shouldn't be there. Or if in my organization I'm using TeamViewer and suddenly I see VNC or AnyDesk, then that's an anomaly, right? So either the user is doing something that he shouldn't, or it's an infection. So those things I think still work, but you still have at least 15%. And it's growing now with the whole AI side, right? Because we've seen those prompt injection where you basically just ask your Microsoft Copilot, hey, give me all the salary documents from HR, right? And then the AI agent will do it for you. So now
Mm-hmm.
it's the living off the AI land. And at the moment, I'm not aware of any good solution that really kind of goes down and says, oh, but he's not allowed to get that for you, right? Maybe we'll get
Yeah,
there, but
that's
uh,
interesting. That's really interesting. And so it's more about raising the cost, you think?
yes, raising the cost, making it slightly different. I mean, in the end, right, we could say you got the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of those 300 plus techniques that attackers use, right? And those are all behavior. And there's the kind of EDR, XDR evaluations where they kind of basically test, and then you can see the nice mapping of how many of those
Mm-hmm.
techniques are detected. And
Mm-hmm.
as you say, you're basically raising the cost because you say, oh, you need to spread across more techniques to be able to be below a threshold. But yeah, in the end, if you want to encrypt a file, there's only 10, 20 different ways to do it. You need to
Mm-hmm.
read the file. You need to write back to some other files, right? Those are all behavior that, if you're smart enough, you can detect it. But as you said, the attackers are raising the bar. I'd say in the past, last year, it was good enough for the attackers just to generate enough false positives, and that way you would basically turn it off, right? Because if you get flooded by alerts, that's as bad as if you get the real detection.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a interesting thing here. Usually, people say that signature detection has been declared dead many times, but we, yes, seriously, but we still use IARA, for example. We still use heuristics. Is signature detection actually dead, or did it just involve something later? let's say. What do you think?
In short, signatures are not dead, and you
Yeah,
said it
yeah.
correctly. Have been declared dead many times. I was at Symantec when Brian, one of the SVP, got quoted in the press saying, "Hey, signatures is dead, and it's no longer a money making." He soon after left the company, but the interesting part is that he actually got misquoted in the press. He said signatures alone are dead. You need signatures and behavior and lockdown and other things. And I agree with that because signatures, they're very fast, very precise. So think about it. If you have a network device like a firewall or a switch, you can't really execute everything that goes through your firewall, right? And say, oh, let's run it for 10 minutes and see what it does. You want to be fast. You're not going to detect everything, but it's good enough if you can detect a few of the things and block it already. So low hardware resources required, very specific. And if it hits on something, if your Yara rule is good, you know it is bad. So
Mm,
I'd say for
okay.
specific things, signatures are still good. Having said that, we all know kind of just flipping a few bits, appending some data, or even just kind of um, opening it in a hex editor and flipping some uppercase, lowercase letters in a DLL name is good enough to change the hash, and then
Mhm.
you're going through it, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure,
you
for
need
sure.
more, but it's again raising a little bit the bar, right? And
Yeah,
it's surprising that how many malware we still see that is basically just one sample on a million systems, and if you have a good signature, you're good and good done.
yeah. And do you think that sophisticated attackers actually test their malware against specific vendors before deployment? Because uh, okay, of course they need to test, but sometimes they just have a short. They don't have one chance, and then what's your perspective about that? Because sometimes we have a groups, you have APT groups that are focusing on one specific businesses that they know that okay, these businesses are, I know that they use CrowdStrike or they use uh, one specific vendor, but they just have a chance. Do you think they actually test their malwares before this type of deployment?
The bigger groups definitely do, yes. They basically, I mean, there
That's
was
why.
a whole thing like Virus Total, but in underground where people generated those labs, and you buy yourself in with some Bitcoin or Monero, and then
Mhm.
you could upload samples, they would test it, and they would guarantee that they're not sharing the samples. As of
Okay.
course with Virus Total, everything you upload will eventually be shared with a lot of the vendors. So basically, at that point, it might not be detected, but a few hours later, it probably will be detected. So for an attacker, it kind of ruins your perspective.
Yeah, that means that army races happen before the attack even starts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe an interesting thing that many people are not really thinking of, and it's not really a secret, most of the big antivirus EDR companies, they have something which is called silent signatures. So basically,
Hmm.
whenever you generate a new signature, as in could be a behavior-based signature, could be a Yara rule, very often you will release it, but you release it in a monitoring-only mode. So you're not blocking it because you say, hey, maybe there's too many false positives, right? I don't want to release something and then blue screen all the systems, like happened with CrowdStrike,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That's bad for publicity.
Hmm.
So you can release kind of silent ones, and then you just get information back on, hey, this would have triggered on 200 million systems. And you say, well, maybe I'll change it. You can also use that, of course, to fish for similar samples. So very often with APTs, companies will generate those signatures and say, well, if I see something which is similar, please let me know and send me maybe the hash or the file name. And
Yeah, makes sense.
I've been in, let's say, many situations where the security company had a system where the developer of the malware was testing the new versions, but they also used a antivirus like Norton Antivirus. And
Hmm.
basically, while they tested it, we would get all the fresh samples, right? And we would still see the kind of C/development/version 2/ and everything, all the symbols still in. So they were just basically compiling it. We would get the new version, and we could check that we detected even before they even launched it. So sometimes the cat and mouse game is in favor of the
Yeah,
defender. Yeah.
yes, I know that. I remember that in my last presentation. I had a last presentation in NC Council for NC Council University in the last week. But before that, I I did my presentation besides, and I remember that the Microsoft I bypassed the XDR, the Microsoft one day before, one day before the presentation. In the day of the presentation, that's working well, but my MacBook just resolved it, stopped during my presentation, and I was so frustrated. But okay, let me forget this. But I remember that my bypassing this totally makes sense, because for example my bypassing using indirect calls
Mhm.
worked for, it's more or less okay during 2 weeks, and then after that, after the Microsoft block my reverse shell, in the same time another players could attack my reverse shell. It's almost this. It's almost in the same time. That's really interesting, because like you said, sometimes you have a silent. You have the silent side of the XDR or the EDR or the antivirus, whatever, that are collecting informations to really understand what happened, to don't try to disclosure false positives, or to don't make noise for all the people. Yeah, and you have lead research teams.
Mhm.
When you are in charge to the threat research, let's say, how do you decide what deserve attentions? Because the landscape is overwhelming. Ransomware, supply chain, 0 days, leave off the land abuse. What was a trend you saw coming before the rest of the industry in catch up?
That's a good question. I think probably info stealers. We saw kind of starting just with stealing, as
Mm-hmm.
in your local passwords on the
Mm-hmm.
browser, but then expanding and expanding and expanding. Those that was definitely something that we saw grow as it goes. Let's see what else. I mean, you said it correctly. It's sometimes difficult. I mean, you got the big ones like WannaCry and everything, right? Which it's
Mm-hmm.
just by pure scale, as in it hits so many system in, let's say, 1 or 2 hours, and it's disrupting a lot, right? Blue screening, or kind of in that case, the ransomware screen. So that usually hits the news, and then of course we see a spike in submissions as well, and say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
that's affecting a lot of our customers, so we should definitely ensure that we can protect against it. The interesting ones are really the slow rollers. Um, Maybe two things to say. One is we had a few interesting banking Trojans,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually where I learned my first Portuguese words, right? Because
Okay.
we had all the um, Banco do Bradesco, Caixa, all of those
Yeah,
banks where
in Brazil,
they would
Bradesco, Banco do
Santander,
Brasil,
yeah.
Santander.
So they
Yeah,
would
of course.
overlay the mask where you put in your password, right, with their
Mm-hmm.
own form field, so that you type
Mm-hmm.
something in, but it's actually not in the browser. It's in a small window which is overlaid. And the fun part
Mm-hmm.
was if you move the browser window, you could
Mm-hmm.
see a lag. So as in the other window would just try and hop after it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we saw at the beginning, I think, for 1 or 2 banks, and then started seeing it for more and more. And of course, they tried it with the boleto, the payment, where you just overlay the barcode. So you think you're paying something, but it's actually a different QR or barcode.
Yes, I already worked with many cases because I before I worked with EDR and research, of course, I already worked, until now I worked with forensics, and these cases happen really many times in Brazil. Yes, they changed the value of the boleto. Yes, this it's like the invoice, and then people go there, pay, thinking that okay, I'm paying the correct like, invoice, but this was changed for the malware or whatever. And then this is really interesting. I don't know if you have a case and you can share with us right now from a bank in Brazil, because this really happened many times in Brazil until now. Okay, months before, let's say in 2025, I listen cases. Just sometimes just the modus operandi is it's almost the same, but I don't know if you can share one specific case that paying your attention and okay, this is was really interesting and you just saw in Brazil.
I do remember a fun case. I honestly don't remember which bank it was,
Mm-hmm.
but it was in São Paulo, and
Mm-hmm.
basically the attackers managed to get the ownership of the domain. So they were
Mm-hmm.
able to, at the domain registrar, to change the DNS settings and
Mm-hmm.
basically point the whole domain of the bank to their own infrastructure. And they had cloned the whole page,
Mm-hmm.
so that you could still log into the online banking. But of course, it would say, oh, there's some technical issues at the moment, try again tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
while they had the kind of all your passwords and would log in
Mm-hmm.
with that. The
Mm-hmm.
interesting case for me was, and I've never seen anything like that afterwards, is they actually used some cloud services for that, but they really spent a lot. I mean, yes, using stolen credit cards, of course, but the systems was running so smooth that it was faster than the original website, and people started noticing it, as in customers called up the real bank and said, hey, thanks for the upgrade, finally the system is really usable and is really good. And this is one of the things, at least that's what they told me, that triggered them to say, wait a minute, we didn't do an update. And then they started analyzing and figuring out, oh, something fishy is going on. So
Oh my
sometimes
goodness.
being too good is not in your favor as well. But I thought
Yeah.
that was a fun one.
Yes, for sure.
So, I mean, another case, not for a bank in Brazil, but when we're talking about kind of how to select which one to analyze and not, I want to talk about one case where we basically messed up, because very
Mm-hmm.
often we don't talk enough that
Mm-hmm.
we all make
Mm-hmm.
mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Stuxnet in
Mm-hmm.
2010, right? The big attack against Iranian nuclear enrichment facilities.
Mm-hmm.
We receive the samples because we receive thousands of samples per day. And as an analyst, you basically just picked the last one, analyze it, do the signatures, detection, and then go to the next one. So someone analyzed it, saw that there's a LNK, a link zero-day vulnerability. So we kind of looked at it, added a signature for it, started analyzing a little bit more, but said, yeah, okay, now we have our customers protected. And we already moved further when kind of doing a remark, oh yeah, looks like an interesting sample, I should have another go at it, as in looking deeper at the LNK vulnerability. And it took us, let's say, 24 hours till we really looked into it and saw, hey, wait a minute, there's some code which is not 86 and kind of Windows assembly code. There's some Siemens schematics for IPCs, right, for those industrial control
Mm-hmm.
systems in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we said, hey, what is it, right? We never heard of it. So we went to the Siemens website. We downloaded the trial version of their kind of IPC control systems and started doing Hello World, compile it and see, oh yeah, that looks similar. And that's how we analyzed it. But for the first, let's say, 24 hours, we basically said, oh, it's just a nice 0-day vulnerability, but that's it. We didn't see the other vulnerabilities being used. We didn't see the impact that it might have on the real systems.
Yeah.
So we got lucky because our engineers were kind of interested in really going deep. And of course, also in the industry, we talked with others like Kaspersky. They also had samples, and the university. So those were external ones which said, hey, by the way, did you see that sample as well? And we said, yeah, let's have another look, right? But I admit, at the first 1 hour, right, it's not that we looked at it and said, oh, this is going to be headline news. In the first hour, we would have missed it.
Yeah. Yes, I really heard about histories about that. The same thing. Okay, in the first time, they look and say, okay, this is just okay, a common malware. Okay, that's okay. This is just a common vulnerability, and okay, but when really all happened, the people say, okay, bro, this is really uh that's strong, that's really a huge problem. We have a huge problem here. And then businesses or antivirus, or businesses antivirus like Symantec, Kaspersky, and stuffs like that stopped to think, okay, uh, this is not a simple 0 day. It's not a simple and yes, was really the big attack. And of course, this attack, all the people, I think that not only people from cybersecurity, but many people from other areas sometimes already heard about this .NET. And then yeah. And then okay, let's talk about AI. I know that I know that you love to talk AI, talk about AI. There is so much hype around AI powered malware. From your technical perspective, attackers meaningfully using AI for evasion yet, or is mostly marketing? Is this just automations with better branding? Do you think AI generated obfuscation could realistically outperform human right evasion?
The short answer is no. So we don't have the Terminator or Skynet. I actually have my Skynet T-shirt
Yeah.
for it.
I need one that.
Um, it's mostly about automation, so being faster, and also that of course means finding vulnerabilities. So at the moment, February 2026, there's a huge spike in using AI vulnerabilities research or pen testing, right? I
Mhm.
stopped counting. There's so many tools from Hexstrike AI and so on, Expo, Horizon 3 AI, I mean, there's so many different ones. This kind of the lower ones, they basically just use Metasploit and some GPT model and basically just copy paste stuff back and forth. But the smarter ones are there. And Anthropic, they just found 500 zero-day vulnerabilities in open source in January. Azel
Mhm.
found 12 0 days in OpenSSL, and some of them have been there for 10 years in the open source, right? Nobody else found it. So that's definitely helping. So I'm not saying AI is not changing the game for attackers, but in terms of malware, the obfuscation, yes, it can do obfuscation. You can do reinforcement learning where it's kind of going back and forth till it's no longer detected. But at the moment, a skilled human, is still better. And we had all those obfuscators, as in you can download from underground websites obfuscator for nearly every malware as well. So it's not something really new. And as we said before, the behavior will still be the same. So you can obfuscate it, so you bypass the signatures, your hash will be different. But if you try to encrypt all your files, the behavior is still there, right? And then we're down to, is the behavior changed, yes or no? So I think that's one. The more interesting ones for me are the AI-powered ones that actually use AI during the runtime. So not just generating with the AI and then there's no AI in it, but actually have some AI or call some AI while you execute it. Like Lamehawk is the first example, which was in the wild. It's attributed to APT28, so the Russians against Ukraine. And it was an info stealer. And in the info stealer itself, it had actually two English prompts saying, hey, generate me some Windows command line prompt that will find me information about the system, like netstat, which user am I, what's the AD groups, and so on. And the idea, of course, is that you ask an LLM, in that case, they used Hugging Face with the Quen model, and then theoretically, each time you will get some slightly different command back, right? Which means, A, the code is different, and even the behavior could theoretically change, right? Because it might be using different commands. But first of all, the Trojan, which had that prompt in it, was still static. So even a simple MD5 or SHA-256 would have detected it. So not too sophisticated, right? And
Yeah.
the second part is they use temperature of 0.1. So temperature means less variation, less hallucinations, which is good because you want your code to be able to run. But I ran it 100 times, and in 100 times I got the same command back from the LLM. So you're basically just having a static code loaded from some external party, right? That's not some smart malware. So those, and you would say APT28, right? I mean, those Russian groups, they do know how to do sophisticated ones. So either they were just trolling and kind of, let's say, let's have the B team some field day and test a little bit with AI, or they really believe that it could be helpful. I doubt at the moment, but
Yeah.
I don't really know, right? And we will see more and more. I think VoidLink is probably one to mention. Checkpoint mentioned VoidLink, I think, in January this year. It's like a platform like Cobalt Strike, like a C2 framework. And it probably was generated by one single individual, which has some development skills, because they generated a specifications and say, hey, I want something like this and this and this, and then gave it to an AI platform. And the AI platform basically started small sprints, like developers, right? And say, okay, let's first build this, then build this. They spin up some QA agents to do quality assurance, right? To check, to do the testing. And within 1 week, they had about 80,000 lines of code and a pretty sophisticated kind of attack platform. So that shows, yes, it is doable, but you also need to know what you're asking, right? I mean, just asking, hey, generate me ransomware, you will get something. And I did that a few times. But the thing I got was with symmetric keys. So the decryption key is basically in your malware. Not really smart. It's not having anything with a Tor website. So it's just having a website and an email and say, hey, send me your details and your Bitcoin, and then I'll take care of it. That's not how it works, right? So I think there's a lot of hype out there. At the moment, the biggest thing I see is the automation, as in attack automation, making it faster, finding zero-day vulnerabilities, finding those scans and finding your entry point, like your initial access broker could be in the future, of course, your AI. But once you're inside, the pivoting, that's not really easy, because if you want to, let's say you have broken into the web server and now you want to go to some internal machines, right? Now you either need a proxy that you can scan from external to the internal network, which means you're installing some proxy service, which still can be detected because it's a new process running. Or you would need to have a local AI model. And currently, we're not there yet, right? Even a distilled small, let's say 7 billion system will not.
Yeah, because yes, I really agree with that, because for example, right now we are watching the movement of tools that promise, for example, penetration testing using AI,
Mhm.
I mean that. Okay, I'm not saying that this doesn't work, but for example, I already met with businesses that it's like a CISO that business is okay. My platforms you can just put in place in your businesses, and then you just can put your network change and click start and okay go from your house. For what?
Yeah.
But if we have XDR, and if you have, for example, if I put your platform inside one specific network, and then you need to do, for example, let's say one specific technique that you need to bypass my network controls. How your platform do you work? Or okay, for your platforms works well, I need to disable my antivirus, my XDRs. Let me know what is happening. And usually people say, yeah, it depends on your environment, but okay, my platform that's working really well, and then we can exploit web vulnerabilities and infrastructure vulnerabilities. But yeah, to me, this I never received uh, the feedback, the good feedback about this this is specifically topic that okay AI right now, okay, in 2026, 2027, 2028, I don't know, will be responsible to conduct penetration testing by themselves or without to human interaction. To me, yeah, this is but yeah, in 2026, I'm not okay. I'm studying new technologies with AI based. I'm studying to pass new AI certifications right now. I'm really keep learning more about AI, but I'm not feel comfortable to see okay AI will will be the answer for all the questions, and then yeah, this is just my perspective. You probably know a lot of more than AI than me than I, but yeah, this is okay. When I ask you when I ask you about um the human evasion, AI, whatever. If we zoom out, it feels like the arms race is moving closer to the hardware. It's my perspective. Kernel enforcement, memory isolations. Do you believe the future of detections live in the hardware level protections after 25 years in this field? Do you feel we are winning, or we are just making attacks more expensive?
I think it will be a hybrid. I don't think it's just hardware. I believe a lot will also move into the browser, as in
Okay.
that you can detect and see it in the browser. For one reason, networks traffic will get more and more encrypted. For
Mm-hmm.
example, the encrypted client hello ECH, where it's kind of a TLS extension where you don't even know which website you're going to. I mean, you know which one, but
Mm-hmm.
in the request, you don't even see the domain. You see only,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's going to Cloudflare or to Google, and they will fetch
Mm-hmm.
the website to you,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it for firewalls and IDS, IPS really difficult to actually know what's going on, right? And
Mm-hmm.
with a whole post-quantum encryption, it will get more expensive to decrypt everything as well. So I think it moves to the cloud side, which will be exactly the Cloudflare, Microsoft, and others, which were selling you the telemetry. And yes, that will be quite expensive. Or you move to the client side where it might be in the browser, because your browser knows, oh, you're on a cloud application, right? A SaaS application. So it has the context. And if you go too low, as in kernel level, ring 0, then the message will already be encrypted, right? Because it's encrypted in the application itself. So
Yeah.
that might be the tough one. On the other side, I agree. Some of the things will probably be offloaded, like trusted platform modules, right? TPMs for some encryption keys. I could see that maybe there will be some hardware layer to do kind of analysis, what's going on in your system, right? Behavior-based detection, anomalies. And some of those already exist. We did a proof of concept with Intel. So some of the Intel chips, they allow you that you can actually do some statistics on the assembler code that they actually execute. And we proved that you can have a software which detects if you have ransomware, because the encryption loop is very specific, and those are things you can detect, which is kind of interesting. So that's why I say it's probably going to be kind of a mixture hybrid between dedicated browser or software and some hardware. But yes, it will be shifting again. That's something that I'll see as well.
Okay, this means balance between hardware and another things. But yes, that's interesting. I really agree. I really agree with that. I'm seeing this movement. And for someone listen right now who wants to become a serious malware analyst, not just someone on automated tools, what should they master first? What? Okay, and let me see. What skill is underrated in reverse engineering?
Oh, very good question. I mean, you kind of hinted that yes, by now you can have
this work for me. This questions work for me as well.
the AI with the MCP, the module context protocols for GHydra, for IDA Pro, for Radar 2. So there's lots of automated reverse engineering tools. They work like the 2080 rule. So very often they work, but sometimes they also do hallucinations and give you completely something. So you still need to know what they actually should do, right, to kind of validate it. I'd say in the end, it's the exercise, right? As in, you should still know assembly language. Ideally, of course, probably adapted to Rust or Golang or kind of some of the more modern languages. My advice, kind of where to start, would be try to do some CTFs or online crack me's. So very often there's some online binaries. Of course, start with the simple ones, right? Don't go for the hard ones directly. And even if you fail there are solutions, right? Walkthroughs, and kind of look at those, read through the write-ups, and learn from those till you kind of can do it yourself. And I think those are good ways to practice, right? Like penetration testers, they often do capture the flag games. So for reversing those crack me's are a good start. And probably to kind of go back to what we said at the very beginning, don't think that you should know everything, right? In our industry, it's kind of the imposter syndrome, right? You say, oh, but I don't know anything, right? Candid mentioned so many different MCPs and IDA Pro, and I've never touched those. Don't worry, you have to start somewhere, right? Be curious, don't give up. Every day you learn something new. I learned something new as well. So don't give up, but be persistent, as in there are some which say every day you should learn for 15 minutes something new, and then within 1 year you will be the master of that topic.
Okay, that's really interesting. Candid, this has been incredible. It's genuinely feels like we could talk another 3 hours. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And to everyone, listen, stay curious, stay tuned, and Candid, say something for in this beautiful episode.
I mean, thanks for having me. It was definitely my pleasure. And yeah, maybe to kind of motivate the people as well. Don't think AI will take over your job, right? For the
Yeah,
reverse engineering, we still need talented people. So go out there, study, play with it. There's definitely enough work for everyone for us. It might shift a little bit, so don't be afraid of using AI, but also don't be afraid that AI will take over your job. You still have
yeah.
something to do.
Yeah, really, really, I'm really, I really appreciate your time, really, Kenneth. And I needed to see you in the next time, the next episode, or in again here in Portugal as a speaker, okay, or just watching or talk again. And yeah, this was another episode for R19.io podcast. You can follow Candid Wüest on LinkedIn. I don't know if you have an Instagram. Do you have another social networks to
The,
share here?
the main one is LinkedIn. Used to be
Okay.
on X, but not that frequent anymore. Blue Sky maybe, but yeah, connect me on LinkedIn. There's not that many candidates, and then
Yeah, Candid
happy
Wüest.
to exchange. Yeah,
Yeah, of course. And please stay tuned and see you in the next episode of R19.io podcast. See you. Bye bye.
bye bye.